Welcome to the Rebuild with Confidence Divorce Summit. I'm your host, Lisa Grace. The purpose of the summit is to help individuals find hope and optimism during the midst of their divorce and beyond. Looking back at my divorce, I carried a lot of sadness over the loss of my marriage. I didn't go into my marriage thinking I would get divorced. There were a lot of feelings of sadness which I now know was considered grief. I was grieving the lost hopes, dreams, and expectations I had for my marriage and family. I wish I had known about the grief recovery method back then. With that, I'm incredibly excited to have Ed Owens with us today. Ed is the Vice President of the Grief Recovery Institute, and he will shed light on how the grief recovery method can support us in navigating the complexities of divorce and finding healing. But before we dive in, let me tell you a little more about Ed. Ed is a certified grief recovery specialist and Vice President of the Grief Recovery Institute. His personal journey with the Institute began after the heartbreaking loss of his 3-year-old son, Eddie Ryan, back in 2010. Through his own struggles with conflicting emotions surrounding his son's death, Ed discovered the transformative power of the grief recovery method and has since dedicated his life to helping others overcome their own grief. It's worth noting that Ed himself has experienced divorce and successfully utilized the grief recovery method to transform a bitter divorce into an amicable one. His personal journey gives him unique insight and empathy for those going through similar challenges. So get ready to gain valuable insights, discover the power of the grief recovery method, and embark on a journey of healing and growth. Let's rebuild with confidence together. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Ed. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm excited to be here, and hello to all of you that are watching this podcast.
I would love for you to share, if you don't mind, a little bit more about your journey and how you came to the Grief Recovery Institute and its method.
Sure, absolutely, Lisa. And again, I'm super excited to be here. I'm so glad you reached out to me. And for all of you listening, thank you for taking the time to be part of this podcast and to hopefully glean some helpful information on your journey to your healing that you're all going through. So I get here. I will tell you straight up front, I never thought I would be doing anything dealing with emotions. As someone who is in special operations in the military and combat tours or being a cop in the civilian world, emotions I was always taught were dangerous. And emotions, you don't talk about your feelings. I thought I'd figured it out in life. I'd been through a lot of stuff. I figured out how to survive almost anything the world threw at me until along comes a loss. It would be the death of my firstborn son, Ryan, that I found myself completely overwhelmed. All the tools I thought worked failed me miserably. Everything everybody had ever told me didn't work. I was just in this really dark place, and all I could feel was the pain around that death. And at the same time, I also felt all of the other pain I'd been carrying around in my life came rushing forward. To say I was overwhelmed and barely surviving is an understatement. I would spend the next several years stumbling around. I would try everything someone suggested. I'm sure many of you have tried things people have suggested. What I found was there was always something missing. Like, okay, that was nice, but I still feel bad. And one day somebody suggested, have you ever heard of this thing called the grief recovery method? I'm like, I have no idea what this is. So I signed up, went through the method, had no idea. I actually signed up for a certification training. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what the method was. I will tell you this, I went into it incredibly leery, skeptical. I didn't think, like everything else I tried, counseling, therapy, medications, you name it, I tried it. I didn't think it would work either, but I was so desperate to feel anything but the pain, I gave it a shot. Coming out of that weekend was the first time I was able to feel joy and happiness again in years. It was the first time I was able to talk about Eddie Ryan, and to this day, I can talk about him all day long, and it will not turn sour 5 minutes later. It was the last thing I tried. It was the only thing that worked, and it continues to work in my life every day.
Thank you, Ed, for sharing your heart about how you found the grief recovery method. And my next question for you is, what is grief, or how would you define grief?
Great question. So there's a lot of misinformation in the world about what is grief. Many people think we can only grieve for death. That's simply not true. We look at grief in 2 ways we define it. First, it is the normal and natural reaction to loss of any kind. We grieve for more than just death. Right? As humans, we are, by design, right, capable of these amazing, through the roof joys, happiness, right, connectiveness. And by design, we can also feel deep senses of loneliness, sadness, depression. And because we can feel this entire range of emotions, any of the emotions we feel is normal and natural. Contrary to what society wants to tell us, that if I'm feeling sad, something must be wrong with me or something else, right? Many of you have probably experienced a lot of these full range of emotions around anything in your life. Happiness, sweet feelings at the same, and then maybe it ping pongs over to sad and lonely and depressed feelings, and it goes back and forth. So again, grief is the normal and natural reaction to loss of any kind, right? The second way we look at grief is that we experience this range of conflicting feelings anytime there's an end or a change in a familiar pattern of behavior in our life, right? So we can experience a death that obviously is a significant end of a pattern of behavior in our life, or we can experience grief, these conflicting feelings, when there's a significant change in our life. Like what we're talking about here today, like the end of a relationship is a significant change in our life. And we will have normal and natural feelings, sweet and sour, right, around that. And that's grief.
One example that I have found very helpful and something that I did is that I would compare my loss. You know, if someone said their husband died and I just got a divorce, I would minimize, wanting to talk too much about my pain with that person, thinking that their pain is, valid and mine isn't. And what do you think about that?
Well, I think it's terrible practice, and we were all socialized to do this.
Yes.
In fact, we compare everything in life, right? My house versus my neighbor's house, my job versus their job, my relationships versus their relationships. Here's the truth. Each of us have individual and unique relationships, and each one of those relationships, right, impact us very significantly. And when there is an end or a change in that relationship, whether it was due to death or in your case, divorce, each of us feels that grief at 100% for the person, right? That person who just lost their partner is feeling that loss at 100%. You going through a divorce are feeling that loss at 100%. But because we're socialized and taught to compare, it either, I call it one up, one down, right? I'm either going to put that other person down because, I'm putting myself up, or I'm going to minimize how I feel and raise that other person. Either way, it's a win-lose type mentality. And when I do that, and I've done that before in my life, right? I mean, that's how I was taught. What it does, I either rob myself of the dignity of my relationship and how powerful and meaningful it was to me, or if I put them down, oh, I can't believe they feel that way. I am minimizing their pain. I am robbing them of the dignity of their relationship, which was individual and unique. So what we want, it takes practice, but learning and realizing when we interact and relate with other people, whatever somebody is going through is 100% for them. And what you are going through is 100% for you, with no comparison. We don't want to rob each other of dignity. We want to be compassionate and loving with the people we interact without putting ourselves down or putting them down.
100%. 100%. I agree with that 100%. So what are some common myths about grief?
Okay. So when John was first realizing this, he kind of identified six, what we call the main six core myths of grief. The first one is this thing we call don't feel bad. And many of you have probably heard it. Either someone has said to you, oh, you shouldn't feel bad. Insert intellectual reason why, right? Or it's okay, or it'll be okay, or you'll get through this, or any other way people want to say, don't feel bad. That's them trying to tell you your emotions, you shouldn't be feeling them, right? These are your emotions, folks. However you feel is 100% impactful for you, right? And we try to insert an intellectual reason behind that first myth on why I shouldn't feel bad. As an example, let's talk, because we're talking about divorce. Oh, you shouldn't feel bad, right? They were not a good partner. And your life will be so much better without them in it. I don't know about you, but I've heard that.
I have.
Okay?
Heard, yep.
And that might be true intellectually, and it has nothing to do with how my heart feels. My heart aches because I wish the relationship had been better or different. I wish it had a different outcome. I wish I had more of the things I love about that person I no longer have, right? So this first one is don't feel bad. And you folks, if you get honest with yourself, you probably heard it, and you may have said it to other people. The second one is replace the loss. Now, this one is incredibly pervasive in our lives because it goes with the first one. Don't feel bad, insert intellectual reason why. And oh, here, have you thought about this? Or since we're talking about divorce and romantic relationships, how about, oh, they were never, don't feel bad. They were never meant for you. You'll find somebody else. There's plenty of fish in the sea, right? And it's like, I didn't realize I was dating a mackerel or I was married to a tuna. I mean,
Yes.
I didn't realize this. But we're taught to go and replace it. And where did we learn this? We learned it from well-meaning adults in our life when we were little kids, and something emotionally painful, like someone would call us a name on the playground, or we had a bad day at school. Mom and dad would say, "Don't feel bad. Here's a cookie or some ice cream. You'll feel better." Folks, when we try to, we can't replace any relationship because it's individual and unique. At some point, we might be able to add a new relationship into our life, but it never replaces the one we no longer have. Right? They're two separate issues.
Yep.
Right? At best, I might feel better for a short period of time because I'm distracted, but there's this illusion that I have been able to replace it, and I cannot do that. The third myth is grieve alone. Right? And this one gets reinforced because people around us try to say things that don't feel good. Maybe you've heard this. All these people want to chime in with all this advice and intellectual comments. And something, if one more person tells me this, right, I'm done. That's it. I can't take one more comment. So what do? We withdraw. We withdraw physically from other people because it's just too painful to interact. We close our heart down emotionally because it's too painful, right? And then for some people, just the sense they close themselves spiritually as well. So there's a lot of ways we will isolate ourselves from the world when things hurt. Part of it is we don't, like if we're a parent, we're going through a divorce, right? I don't want my children to see I'm hurting, which plays in nicely with the fourth myth, be strong, right? We all have to be strong. And again, these myths all play together they play together well in the sense that they're easy to mix them, but I don't believe the outcome of them is positive or helpful in any way. We can't be strong for somebody else. At best, we can be loving, compassionate, and supportive for them, but we can't take away the pain they're feeling, right? Mm-hmm. And I need to act strong for my children. Folks, our children are watching us when we go through a divorce or any other loss. We all learn by watching our parents try to be strong for us. And we learn to shut off our emotions. If we are going to grieve, we're going to go to our rooms and be quiet or close the door, right? So people can't see us. Again, I don't want to feel bad. I'm going to go into my room, so I'm alone, to have my emotions and sit with my emotions so I can come back out and act like I'm recovered. And so another one's keep busy. Oh my God, right? Keep busy. Well, if enough time goes by, right, I'll feel better. Who's heard that? It just takes time. Folks, that is a huge myth. Time just passes. What if I told you, instead of having a broken heart, you had a broken arm? And I looked at your broken arm and I said, ooh, don't feel bad. It'll heal. It just takes time. You'd think I was nuts. And you'd be like, what? I need to see a doctor. I need to do something to fix this. Now, we will do that with a broken arm or a root canal or our car breaks down or we got a flat tire. Any of these other things, we know to take action. But when it comes to emotionally painful things, everybody wants to tell us that somehow time will heal. Folks, hear me loud and clear. Time simply passes. It's the actions we take within time that allow us to heal. And whether that's a broken arm, flat tire, you need to go see the doctor for a root canal, you're sick and you got to go to urgent care to get some medications. We do this in every aspect of our life, but we don't do it for emotionally painful things. Somehow we think time will heal. Now, I'm going to ask a general question since we're not here in the room, but I love it when I do this in public. I tell people to raise your hands. So I just want you to give me a little thumbs up for yourself. There's nobody can see you but you. How many of you out there still have sad or painful feelings, conflicting feelings around a loss that happened more than a year ago? More than 5 years ago? More than 10? Folks, if time had anything to do with our discussion, don't you think 10 years or more, we'd feel better by now? Again, it's the actions that we choose to take within time that matter. So those are the big ones.
Thank you. I absolutely know this method is worth its weight in gold, for the reason that I came into this program thinking I was good. time. I've been divorced for, 10 years. And I know that when something would happen with my current marriage, I would react like I used to be in my old marriage. And so I needed to do some more healing and didn't realize it. So I think a lot of people that are in transition don't realize that they don't heal their hearts. This is a perfect time to heal their heart, to do this fabulous work. I actually believe that if you don't, that your picker can be off for who it is that you're going to bring into your life, because you're used to being treated a certain way, or you're used to that kind of hurt. And this method, for me and the people that I've worked with, it empowers and builds strength, and recovery from grief is huge.
It is. You're absolutely correct. It's huge.
And the word grief, sometimes people associate it to just death. And is there any other way? You have a book on divorce, moving on. Is there any way? Yes. That you explain it, that people say, well, grief is just tied to death. How do you expand on that? I know you've kind of touched on it already, but what would you say?
Well, I would say anytime there's an end or a change in a familiar pattern of behavior in your life, you will experience grief. And that's a new concept for most people, because that's not what they're taught. Again, we're taught you grieve for death. We know that's not true. Any change, folks. I mean, you can look at the pandemic. Along comes this pandemic, and every familiar pattern of behavior in our life, including all the relationships in our life, whether it's at work or in my community or just even interacting with my neighbor, everything changed. And I've yet to find somebody who said, oh my God, this is what I've been waiting for my whole life. I'm so excited. Everybody's like, oh my God, this hurts. And why does it hurt so much? Setting aside that you probably know people who died from COVID, or people who have died during the pandemic that you couldn't go to a funeral. Setting that aside, how many of you feel the pain of that massive change that changed everything in your life?
A lot of grief.
A lot. And so we grieve anytime there's even a change, folks, in our lives, whether that's due to death or moving, right? Or a change in a job. I'm excited about my new job, and I miss my old friends.
How many losses does a grief recovery claim that there are?
So we say you can grieve for anything. Well, we acknowledge that there's over 41 major life events, significant major life events that result in grief. And divorce is one. So is loss of health, loss of career or job, loss of trust, loss of safety, right? I mean, there's some big ones. Loss of faith, okay? Moving, pet loss, changes in our health. I've got to mention that one. Divorce, we've mentioned that a lot on this call because that's one of the main topics of this. But death is only one of 41 major events. You know something, folks? Getting married very much can be a grieving event. It's a change. Yeah, it is.
How is that? How is that?
Yeah, it's because I'm super excited for this new chapter in my life, this forever part of my book, right? But even adjusting to being married is a change in every familiar pattern of behavior in my life. Now I'm sharing my life with another person. I am blending my life with theirs, and there's a lot of changes that take place, right? They say that first year is the honeymoon year. I've always experienced that first year as, man, there's a lot of adjustments that have to take place. There's a lot of conflicting feelings, and there's a lot of arguments that can take place. Now, I'm not talking huge ones. I mean, all that might happen, but there's a lot of like little frictions that take place because of all the changes. And those can become the building blocks for problems later in the relationship, coupled with what you already mentioned. I have a past relationship I haven't dealt with. I'm carrying all of that pain from all the past relationships in my life into my current one. Right? It's like having an imaginary or invisible backpack. We're all given it at birth. As we go through life, every time we experience a change in familiar pattern of behavior, something that doesn't feel good, we put something else in that backpack. And over time, it gets kind of heavy. And all you listeners, when we're talking about relationships again, you all know what you love in relationships, don't you? You all know what are red lines or deal breakers. You all know what you want and what you don't want. Where'd you get those lists? You got them from past relationships, and you are carrying them forward as you look for a new relationship. It's a great example of how we carry the emotional pain surrounding grief into our new relationships, because it's still there. I'm not saying that some of these things, like, yeah, I don't like these things, like, that's not good to know what you want and don't want in a relationship. That's positive. But what is not often talked about is that there's associated pain that we also carry with us into that new relationship.
I just had a light bulb moment while you were talking, Ed. This grief recovery method is so powerful that it would be good as a marriage pre-counseling requirement, you
Yep.
know, for couples healing their past wounds and then knowing how to verbalize recovery statements
Mm-hmm.
to
Yep.
one another ongoing. You know, I
We
know
have
it's individual, but can you imagine the foundation that two people would have?
Oh, I wish everybody was taught accurate and helpful information, and we stopped teaching the 6 myths of grief to kids.
Yes.
And kids learned actually concepts around the method. Like my son, who's 15, he has no conscious memory of a life without the method. He was raised from the time he was a little kid around the method. It's the only thing he knows. I wish that was everybody's experience. And then I agree with you. We have a lot of specialists around the world who are LMFTs, licensed marriage and family therapists, who use this method in their practices. I know of a couple of law firms who deal with divorce, and they ask their clients, as they're going through the divorce process, to go through the method so that they can deal with the emotionally painful aspects to better navigate the divorce, right? So that they can do it from a place of, this is what I need to do, versus from a place of anger and resentment and pain. And the therapists or the specialists out there in the world, like yourself, can help people, right, to go through the method to deal with what's emotionally painful in that relationship. And it allows people now to have a choice. So there's a quote within from John. Grief drains us of energy and it robs us of choice.
Mm.
Right. And when we are dealing with something emotionally painful, we are grieving, right? We can feel completely overwhelmed. We can feel completely out of control in our lives. And from that place, I just don't have the energy to do anything, let alone to make a choice. And quite often, because most of us were not raised with some of these concepts and information, we don't even know what choices we can make. And the best we got is what everybody's telling us, which from our experience and me personally, was not very helpful information. And it was not very good choices.
Will you restate John's statement again? Just
Yep. Grief drains us of energy and it robs us of choice.
flat out. Flat out. That's the biggest takeaway. I've heard it, but it made such an important impact on me in this moment. So it kind of goes into a question that I have for you is, how did the grief recovery method help you with your divorce?
That's a great question. So for the folks that don't know, I've been married and divorced twice. My first marriage was 13 years, and we actually ended it very amicably. We walked into the courthouse together holding hands. We stood in front of the judge. The judge said, "Are you sure you two want to get a divorce?" And we said yes, and we walked out holding hands. We gave each other a hug. So that was as good as I think you can get when it comes to a first divorce. My second marriage ended in divorce, and it was incredibly toxic and painful. And I'm not going to get into the details because those don't matter, but it involved the courts. It involved a lot of legal orders. It involved my ex only having supervised visitation with the kids. So it was very traumatic for me and my children. And I was in court with her for almost 2 years.
Mm.
And it was incredibly painful. And every time there was another round, it just added more pain. And I was angry and resentful, and I was hurt. I felt betrayed. I felt threatened that something else would happen regarding the kids. And then I would be introduced to the method while I was going through all of that. And of course, I worked on the loss of my son in that initial time I went through the method. And in coming out of that, I realized the next relationship I need to do is my ex-wife. And it was incredibly hard. I didn't want to do it. There was so much pain. And I also knew what I would get if I chose to do it. So I did the work on that relationship. Remember, grief drains us of energy and it robs us of choice. I was fighting for 100% custody of my kids, which is what I had in temporary orders. I was trying to hurt her as badly as I could because she'd hurt my kids and me so badly. Coming out of doing the work around my ex, I had a different choice. I called my attorney and I said, you know something? I want this ended. Offer a 50-50 parenting plan. and we will co-raise our children together with no other conditions. And obviously she accepted that, and she hasn't changed, but I was able to change because I had a different choice. From a place no longer of pain and resentment, I was able to make a healthy choice around what was in the best interest of my children, not just what I would want. To this day, people see my ex and I interacting, you think we were best friends. Right? And again, she's not chosen to go through the method. I wish she would, but I did. And it allows me to interact from a place of compassion and love versus the place of pain, hurt, and resentment. And people quite often think we're best friends.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. That just touches my heart. It's so important for mankind to have people have that realization, because this peace that you found not only benefits you, your children, in the world, and otherwise that fight could just, your children are your legacy and your future, and you chose a wonderful legacy and a wonderful future for your children and your ex-wife. So, Ed, I applaud you as a man, and everything about this work and what you do. How is this program delivered, and who are the specialists?
Yeah, so we have a couple of ways that this program is delivered. You can go through it one-to-one in 7 sessions with one of our specialists. You could also find a grief recovery method support group, which is delivered over 8 sessions in a group setting. Those are the 2 primary ways in which to experience the grief recovery method. We offer other programs as well. We have a pet loss program. We also have a helping children with loss, which, for all of you listening, if you're going through a divorce or you've been through a divorce, your children are grieving that too. Maybe some of you had divorced parents when you were a child, and it was incredibly painful to navigate as a young person. That program is where we work with the adults over 4 sessions so that the adults can teach the principles of the method and help their children to deal with whatever's painful for them around the divorce. So I would encourage you, to seek out a specialist to go through the method for you, so you have you deal with that emotional pain you've been carrying. You are in a better place to make different choices. And I also encourage you to look at our Helping Children with Loss program, based upon the book When Children Grieve, to help your kids, right? Because our children really, like you're saying, these are our legacy, but we also as adults want to always help our children have the best skills and tools. We want to help them. As a parent, when you see a little person who's just hurting and devastated and their heart aches, we just want to sit there and wrap our arms around and make it all go away. And it doesn't just go away, folks. We have to be the emotional leader as well as the leader in our families to help teach them how to navigate life's painful stuff. So those are our programs. How do you become a specialist, or where do you find specialists? The Institute, griefrecoverymethod.com, talks about becoming a specialist. It also lists all of our different programs. It also has information on how to find a specialist, whether to work in person or virtually. So I would encourage you to kind of look at what you could read about the programs, you can watch testimonials, and you can find somebody. Well, obviously, Lisa is a great resource for all of you, because we're all doing this right now. And I would encourage you to get on Lisa's calendar, book a call with her, see if this is right for you, and then work with Lisa. That's what I would encourage you to do.
Thank you.
For those of you that are in different parts of the world, maybe you're listening to this from Europe or from Africa or Asia, because we have folks on 6 continents. Maybe you want to work with somebody in your time zone.
Mm-hmm.
You could also use the search function to find a specialist. Specialists are uniquely trained by the Institute, like Lisa is. They go through a certification training, from us, which includes way more information than is found in the handbook, the Grief Recovery Handbook, so that Lisa and other specialists like her can provide you with the most robust healing experience possible, more so than just getting the handbook from your local library or your local bookstore. It requires special training. It requires and once the training's done, it requires some other things like pilot programs, and she has to work with grievers, and we help her step by step as she's doing that until she has demonstrated her ability to be a specialist. And then we list her in our international database so that she can be, like all our other specialists, what we consider highly qualified, trained, and skilled to work with grievers on any loss whatsoever.
I feel honored and blessed to have found the Grief Recovery Method. It's changing lives every day, and my heart just bursts with excitement at the possibility of bringing someone to this program. And so I can't thank you enough. So how can someone get a free copy of the Grief Recovery Handbook?
Great question. If you go to griefrecoverymethod.com, right there on our main website, you will see that you can get the handbook for free. We just covered the shipping and handling.
And it's a great book. You can do it on your own, but there's a world of difference when you're doing it with a trained specialist.
There is. And I would also throw in, if you're just curious, folks, and you're not even sure you want to just get the handbook for free, plus shipping and handling. The Institute, we've been around for 45 years. We have donated copies of the handbook and copies of our other book, When Children Grieve, to almost every library in North America.
Okay.
So you can check with your local library. Odds are they have it. You can check it out for free. Right? I would encourage you to read the first 58 pages. And if what you read in those opening chapters resonates with you, if there's something that just feels right about it, then I would encourage you to book a call with Lisa or any other specialist, to have a conversation. But we've tried to make the handbook as accessible as possible by putting it into almost every library we can think of.
And any language, 20 of
Yeah, we have other languages, folks. We just published French. We're publishing Italian. We're publishing Dutch. We did the Russian, Ukrainian translation before the war started, but we have it in Spanish. We have it in Japanese, in Chinese, in Korean. We have it in Persian. The list goes on. So the handbook is, now you won't find those other languages probably in your library. The English versions will be in the libraries, but there are copies in other languages, probably close to 40 other languages. And we're about to do Italian as well. So that's about to be published. But French just came out like a week ago. So that's our most recent publication. Just before John died, I was telling him, like, John, can you believe it? I got the Russian translation done, the Italian translation, and the French translation. And he laughed and he said, I never thought we'd get those 3 translations in those countries ever done because they got too much alcohol or vodka.
Exactly.
And again, folks, alcohol can be a way that we try to numb and replace our feelings. So it very much ties into that first and second myth. Don't feel bad. Here's a drink or 2 or 3. You'll feel better.
100%. 100%. The short-term energy relieving behaviors,
Correct.
So Ed, I can't thank you enough for being here today. I love you and the Institute and everybody that works tirelessly behind the scenes to make this program great. Keep the website up, and your support is always wonderful. And I can't thank enough the audience for tuning in. I think this is probably going to be my favorite interview. And go out and change worlds, Ed. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. And for all of you that were listening, thank you for spending this time with us, letting us share some information that I personally believe is very helpful, but I hope you find it to be helpful. And then if we have one other takeaway from all of this, and I believe Lisa's going to share with you a free ebook.
Yep.
Please take a look at that. And if you do nothing else, read the ebook, maybe think about reading those 58 pages, but please book a call with Lisa or any other specialist to have a conversation on how we and the method can help you deal with your emotional baggage or pain that you're carrying around. Because I will tell you personally, it made the difference in my life. I get to live the life I live, which is one from a place of joy and happiness and connectivity, versus the life I lived in that dark place, isolated, alone, and in pain. My wish for each of you is to find that joyous life you are designed to live. And I hope you take that challenge.
I take it. Thank you. Thank you, Ed. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in and listening. God bless.
Bye, folks.
Thank you for joining the Rebuild with Confidence Divorce Summit. I appreciate your participation, and I'm proud of you for leaning in to your healing journey. If you're ready to take the next step towards rebuilding with confidence, book a discovery call with me at secondactcoaching.com. Together, we'll uncover the strategies and resources to help you start the rebuilding process and create a life you are excited about. Remember, you are not alone. We're here to support you every step of the way. Take care, my friend, and remember, there's always hope for a brighter future, and the best is yet to come.